I got 10 subscribers now. Thank you all so much for the support. In celebration, I decided to go ahead and make the game Snake. I thought this would be the hardest game to make so far, but it actually ended up being simpler than Pac-Man. So I start as always by fiddling around with making the window the right size, and got to work on the snake. The snake is stored as a list of points, and that means exceptions that crash my game many times. But after some errors, I got it to show up. It just looked like a green line, so I added some movement code. I think I started doing homework or something, and forgot to stop recording. But here's some new, perfectly functional code. Nah, I just completely forgot how I named my variables. Actually, that wasn't the problem. I had set the direction to 0, which wasn't moving the snake in any of the 4 directions I had listed. I think this was the biggest waste of time throughout the entire project. Hey, look at that! It moved! So now the snake moved and was being drawn, but you couldn't die, or earn points, or even control it with your arrow keys. And I decided to rewrite the completely functional movement code. The arrow keys and WASD keys can now move the snake. Where was I? Oh, apples and death. The apples generate randomly, and once you move over one, it goes somewhere else. This meant I had to rewrite the movement code once again, so you move forward and keep your rear end in the same spot. I also made it so the game checks if you are eating an apple every time you move, instead of every time the snake is drawn to the screen. And of course, it didn't work, so I added a line of code to tell me if it ate the apple. Everything went south from there, and I encountered some new error messages. But then the apple was eaten and moved somewhere else, and that made it all worth it. So next, I made the snake start out as 3 long instead of a single point, and found that it would sometimes get drawn as a square made out of 4 points. I wasn't sure why this was happening, and while trying to fix it, I broke the apples again. So I fixed the apples, and then noticed that I had written some dumb lines of code that rendered the head at every point's Y value. I don't know why I wrote that, or even how it was working for such a long time, but I fixed it. And then I continued on my quest to elongate the snake. And then it grew 2 heads, and then the head went off on its own. And then the snake left behind a piece of its body, and the horror story just kept continuing. So I had some fun with the snake not being a snake, but then it worked, and I went back to work on making a long snake. And then the elongation worked, but the snake wouldn't stop growing. It was a load of fun to play around with, but I fixed it in order to continue with the game. I made a way to pause it, which, like in all my other games, is the spacebar. I also played the game for fun, and added a new score counter. I also spent about 10 minutes trying to find a font, like that really matters. Next came death. How death works is that if you go off the screen, you die. If your head is in the same spot as another part of the snake, you also die, and it worked perfectly. So I added a high score variable, so you can see your top score. I worked on some art for the snake head, which looked terrible, and I ended up removing it about half an hour later. I worked on a new addition I called the Super Apple, which is worth 100 points and grows your snake by 10, but my footage got corrupted and you'll just have to take my word for it. I hope that you enjoyed seeing how I made this game. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Comment what game I should make next in this series, and I hope you have a great day.